As a lifelong Star Wars collector, yes, my parents took me to see it when I was 6 months old, put me on their lap in 1978, and just stared at the screen and let it warp my brain, apparently. Explains a lot. It's really easy to distinguish between the original Kenner line, right, from the 80s. Can't really call it the vintage line anymore, the retro line. I guess we call it the original line? Don't know. We've had so many, recreations of that. And, then Power of the Force 2, when that came along. Clearly a different line. How many have there been? And are we ready to enter what I call the fourth age of modern Star Wars collecting? Let's talk about that and how we define it here on Spector Creative. Hey, everyone out there in toy pop culture fun land. It's definitely fun land when we're dealing with toys. I'm Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, longtime collector and toy maker, which gives this channel a bit of a unique voice. I have spoken before about the different ages of Star Wars collecting, right? I mean, we clearly have the first age was the Kenner age, right? Where we got all sorts of fun little aliens and, look at how much this Obi-Wan has been played with. I mean, this saw a lot of love. So that was clearly, the original line. And then in 10 years go by, no Star Wars product at all. I know, shocker by today's audience. And then we get Power of the Force 2 in 1995, which was defined very much about over muscular versions of the characters and 5 points of articulation. But I don't think anyone really saw this line as an extension of this. It was really a new line, a new hope for collecting. Indeed. No pun intended. All right, so this is clearly a different toy from the Kenner line, a separate line, to collect, if you will. No one sees it, I think, as an extension. And I don't think anyone realized that the modern line was just going to keep going the way it has. I mean, it's gone for 30 years. We're now at the, 30 years and 2 months of Power of the Force 2. And if you look at, versus the Kenner line had a clear, 8 years, 7 years, 1978 to 1985, and that was it. Clear block of time. With the modern line, it's been going more or less straight. There was a slight season and a half, nothing on shelf in 1999, right before Episode 1 shipped, but that was more about clearing the aisles. That was when things like the original Tatooine Power of the Force 2 skiff shipped, or rather didn't, because nobody was taking the line at the time, and that was it was the last wave of Comtech figures. All right, but other than that, it's been pretty consistent, right? But what hasn't been consistent is the articulation and the packaging. So the Kenner line obviously had the same packaging for all 7 or 8 years. Excuse me. They just changed the logo, and eventually in the last year, Power of the Force 1, or Power of the Force with the coins, took over, and it was what's called an evolution, not a revolution of the packaging. Just sort of taking it to the next logical level, not completely redoing it. So looking then back at the 30 years of the modern line, obviously Power of the Force 2 lasted the longest outside of the vintage collection, going from 95 through 99-ish. So, good 4 years. All the other lines after that, we've had Power of the Jedi and 30th Anniversary and Saga and Vintage Collection and Legacy Collection and, all sorts of names. So I made a video previously, I'll link it at the end, sort of talking about what I saw as the 3 stages of modern Star Wars collecting. So the first clearly being, Power of the Force 2. As I said, defined by the over-muscular bodies, which were on trend at the time. It took about 2.5 years to release a new version of Luke and Han and Leia, less muscular, more movie accurate, because that was the feedback Kenner or Hasbro got out of the gate. But it takes 2.5 years to go from feedback to something on shelf. So Power of the Force 2 did sort of have 2 different aesthetics. They had the beefy versions in the beginning, and then they, went down to more slim versions once they could catch up to the development cycle. But they were all still kind of defined by 5 points of articulation. Yeah, we got, helmetless Vader got the very first elbow cut in the line. But for the most part, we're talking, just 5 points of basic articulation. Well, actually 6, because they had a waist swivel. Kenner didn't have a waist swivel back in the day. And then I defined what I called the second age would be the sort of post Power of the Force 2. Let's see, who have I got here? Oh, here's more Power of the Force too. So yeah, there's Ben here when they were doing these weird flippity things. Yeah, this drove me crazy, especially because like you couldn't exactly just take it off, and this like wasn't Ben without his cloak. It was Ben without his cloak, but he still had his sleeves on. I guess it's not as weird as the original figure that had his cloak on because there's his hood, yet still had a removable cloak. Go figure. All right, so yeah, so there's your Power of the Force 2 with their wonkiness, with the flippity things, and then the muscles. And then came Power of the Jedi. Now, I know this was technically a Power of the Force 2 Comtech figure, but go with me on this one. This is when we started getting more articulation. So in this case, we have a cut joint here, and we have actual knee joints for the first time. And that was really what the second iteration was. And this lasted through Power of the Jedi and the two sort of saga editions, the gold card and the blue card. So I would look at that as kind of the second iteration. So, we'll go with Han's here. Iteration 1. And then here's iteration 2 of modern Star Wars collecting, where we got more articulation and we got more detail. Like, for the first time, Han actually got his jacket sculpted correctly on the back with the details. All right, and then we had our third iteration. And this was sort of heralded in first by the 500th, or was it 500? No, 300th Boba Fett figure. 500 was Vader, which got more articulation and more accurate scaling. And then this kind of came to a climax with the original trilogy collection saga line, which were the first time we got figures on vintage cards, which Hasbro said they would never do until they did them. This predated the vintage line, and it's a big reason we didn't get them in cast in the vintage line, because they were all released on these vintage collection saga, which, while not quite as good as a vintage figure, it was a big improvement over, Power of the Force 2. Much more accurate. We got ball joints, usually at the arm and at the elbow. We did not get ball joints on the legs, though. We did get ball joints on the knee, and sometimes we got foot articulation. So again, here we go. Here's Obi-Wan, and then let's see. Here's the that Saga collection Obi-Wan. So yeah, you can see he now has soft goods, and his even though it's hidden by the cloak. Oh, there we go. We'll get it out. So he has that swivel cut joint, not a ball joint in his elbow. He does have ball joints in the shoulder, and no articulation in the legs. So that kind of defined the, call it the vintage collection saga line the original trilogy collection saga line. I'm trying to get his cloak back on here while I'm doing the video. Probably never a good idea. There we go. And then the early vintage line, which was very much defined in the same way. So you had figures, yes, with, maybe there was a ball joint here and there, but it wasn't ball joints everywhere. And then that became the vintage line. Ponda Bob is a great example. Since he's on shelf still now, he was an earlier, Ven Dengar is a perfect example. He got a lot more articulation than the Saga version and a lot more than the Power of the Force 2 version, but still not a super articulated figure. And that's where we're heading now. So again, we got iteration 1, iteration 2, cut joints, iteration 3, some ball joints, and now we have entered a fourth age. I would call this Han, this new vintage Han, the fourth age of Star Wars collecting. And how do you define that? Well, one, there's ball joints everywhere. So that's a big one. Ball joints on the legs, ball joints on the arms. There's also this very neat joint, this twist leg here, which we're seeing on all of the current. I'm looking for another iteration here. Is this Luke? Yeah, so there's Luke. So yeah, again, he's got that really interesting, that turning cut joint at the upper leg. As well as, of course, ball joints everywhere else. But it really is this joint, this cut joint that's been introduced, that is a new joint that we haven't really seen before. So here's the new Obi-Wan, right? Same thing. So this Obi-Wan not only has ball joints at the knee, ball joints at the waist, but again, it has this really innovative turn here that we're seeing on all of this generation's figures. Yeah, so okay, so here we go. So yeah, here's Han, Luke, and Obi-Wan in iteration 4, all with standard articulation, ball joints everywhere, and that new twisting leg joint. And sort of the reason that we're getting the main cast again, besides the fact that, you know, we're getting it from the Mos Eisley Cantina as like a return to Tatooine thing, whenever we see sort of toy technology take a leap, it tends to be an excuse to redo the main cast. And you can kind of track the number of times the main cast has been done and match that to sort of each age. So you had, you know, again, the Power of the Force 2, Wave 1, boom, main cast. The next time we got the main cast was kind of the last wave of Power of the Force 2, which were the flashback and the Comtech figures, which was really the next time the full main cast was done all at the same time. I mean, we had a Luke here and there. And that was, you know, when we started getting the cut joints, and that was leading us into Power of the Force, or Power of the Jedi, which gave us that 300 Boba Fett, and then the Saga line, you know, which, again, was defined very much by some ball joints, but not, you know, there's no ball joints here. This is the Resurrection of the Jedi 5-pack with Luke, or 4-pack. And, yeah, there's no ball joints there, but, and there's no ball joints, you know, here, this is the Vintage Collection, or the Saga Original Trilogy Collection. Again, no ball joints. We do get ball joints on the arms there. And, yeah, and then our final one, 4th age. So this would be 3rd age. And there we go. So we are now in the 4th age, no offense to Jack Kirby and Darkseid, of modern Star Wars collecting. Will there be a 5th age? Will we get to a point that the entire main cast will get redone again with more technology? I mean, honestly, I don't know how much further you can go from this. I mean, you know, we got a $20 figure that's super articulated, ball joints everywhere, you know, photoreal face paint. It's a great looking figure. And I think that, yeah, this wave, the fact that we're getting the full cast for the 4th time, you know, so yeah, Power of the Force 2, right before Power of the Jedi, and then the Saga Original Trilogy Collection would be 3. And then Vintage Collection, finally getting the main cast, because we've never had them in the Vintage Collection, 4th age. And there you go. That's kind of how I define each age of modern Star Wars collecting. How do you define them? Do you kind of make up your own rules? We all make up our own rules. Love to hear about them in the comments. Let me know. As always, thank you for watching. It is a pleasure to have you, and it made this day that much brighter. Hope you have a wonderful day. Share this video if it intrigued you, and I'll see you in the next video.